The sun burned red in the alien sky. Reed stood silent in the center of the circle, surrounded by tall alien warriors. Their eyes glowed. Their armor gleamed. But none of them stepped forward. They only watched him, like hunters watching prey. At the top of the steps stood Tarnok, the supreme leader of this alien planet. His voice echoed across the stone courtyard. "This human has volunteered," Tarnok said, grinning, "to face the beast of the Ravager Wastes." The aliens hissed and cheered. But Reed had not volunteered. He had been chosen. Chosen because he was the only human in the camp. Chosen because Tarnok hated him. And everyone knew what this mission meant. Death, the Ravager Wastes were cursed. No warrior ever returned. Monsters lived there. Big ones. Ancient ones. Even the aliens feared to go near. Reed clenched his fists, but said nothing. Tarnok's seconds in command stepped forward and handed Reed a dull blade. "Good luck, Outlander," he sneered. Reed took the blade. No armor. No food. Just one knife and the clothes he wore. The gates to the jungle opened. Everyone watched. No one spoke. Reed took his first step into the dark. Twisted forest. Hours passed. The jungle was alive. Strange sounds echoed from every side. Thick vines hung from trees like claws. The air smelled like blood and old bones. Reed moved carefully, listening to the wind, the rustling leaves, the growl that came from nowhere, everywhere. Suddenly, he heard something. Footsteps. Soft. Light. Not the monster, someone else. He turned and saw her. A small alien girl. Pale skin, dark eyes, thin arms. She looked like she didn't belong here. She wore no armor, only a cloak. "You're not supposed to be here," Reed said. She looked around, then quickly stepped forward. In her hand was something shiny metal. A better knife. She pushed it into his hand. "Take this," she whispered. "Your blade is useless." Reed stared at her. "Why are you helping me?" "Because if you live," she said, "you will have the right to challenge Tarnok." She looked around again. "It is our law, ancient law. If you kill the beast, you can wear its bones, and if you do, all must listen to you, even Tarnok." Then she vanished into the trees, gone like a shadow. Reed looked down at the new blade. Sharp, balanced, real. He took a deep breath and walked deeper into the forest. Night came. He found a cave, dry and hidden. Inside, he built a small fire with broken branches. He couldn't sleep. Not here. Not while that thing was out there. Then came the sound. A growl. Deep, close. The fire flickered. Reed stepped out of the cave, slowly, carefully. Something moved in the dark. Then he saw it. Eyes, big, yellow. Unblinking, the beast stepped forward. It was massive, twice the size of a man. Its skin was black and armored with bone plates. Its claws were long, its breath heavy. The Ravager Reed didn't run. He COULD single quotes. Instead, he backed slowly into the cave. The beast followed. He raised the sharp knife. His hands shook. The Ravager roared. Reed threw a stone. It hit the wall. A loud crack. The beast turned its head. Just for a second. That's all Reed needed. He stabbed. The blade sank deep into the beast's neck. But the Ravager didn't fall. It screamed in rage and slammed its claw into Reed's side, throwing him against the wall. He gasped. Pain burned through his ribs. The beast stumbled. Blood spilled from its neck. It lunged again. Reed rolled under its body and stabbed upward. Again and again. The monster crashed down. Still dead, Reed didn't move. He stayed silent, breathing hard. Then he looked at the body, the bones. He remembered the girl's words. Where its bones? Challenge TARNAK, By morning, Reed stood over the dead beast. He used the knife to cut away its thick hide and bone armor. It was slow work, bloody, painful. But he didn't stop by noon. He wore part of the Ravager's skull as a helmet, bone plates over his shoulders, its claw as a blade. He looked like a warrior from legend. He looked like death. He turned toward the jungle path and began walking back. At the alien camp, no one spoke when he appeared, not even Tarnok. Reed walked slowly, his shadow long in the red light. The bone helmet gleamed. The crowd parted. Whispers filled the air. He's alive. He killed it. He wears the bones. The law was clear. He had the right to challenge, and now a planet would listen. Asterisk silence. That was the first thing Reed noticed as he walked through the massive gates of the alien city. No shouts, no guards stopping him, no laughter or music like before. The crowd had gathered, but no one dared speak. Because Reed was no longer just a human. He was something else now, something terrifying. He wore the skull of the Ravager like a crown. Its thick claws hung from his belt. Bone armor covered his chest and shoulders. His eyes were combat cold. A deep scar now cut across his cheek, but he walked tall, alive, stronger, and by tradition, dangerous. The aliens slowly stepped back, forming a path through the city square. Children gasped. Warriors looked away. Even the elders stood frozen. At the top of the stone stairs, Supreme Leader Tarnok rose from his throne. His smile was gone. His voice, when it came, was dry and forced. You live. Reed stopped in the center of the square and looked up at him. I do. You killed the Ravager. Reed reached into his pack and pulled out the beast's massive tooth. He threw it into the air. It landed near Tarnok's feet with a loud, final thud. The crowd murmured. One of the elders stepped forward, voice shaking. He wears the bones. The law is clear. Tarnok's face twitched. It is a forgotten law, he growled. Old, dusty. From a time of myth. Another elder spoke. It is still law. Tarnok glanced at his guards, then back at Reed. So human. You return and wish to rule. I didn't come back to rule, Reed said calmly. But if you try to ignore your own laws, I will. From the edge of the crowd, a soft voice spoke. He returned in bone. He is owed the council. All heads turned. It was her, the pale alien girl who had helped Reed in the jungle. She stepped forward, cloak brushing the ground, and knelt before Reed. I told you he would survive, she whispered. Reed looked down at her and gave a small nod. The warriors looked shaken. No one knelt lightly in public, not unless they were swearing loyalty. More voices from the crowd followed. One kneeled. Then another, and another. Within seconds, a full line of aliens had bent the knee. Heads low, Tarnak, single quotes as fists clenched. You dare challenge me over a human. The council's bell rang loud. That meant only one thing. A formal trial was coming. Later that night, Reed sat alone in a guarded chamber. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't relaxed either. The council would meet tomorrow. According to tradition, he could speak as a challenger. If enough elders agreed, Tarnok would be forced to accept a trial of honor. The girl entered quietly. She carried a bowl of hot water and a fresh bandage. You should rest, she said. I'm not sure sleep will come, Reed replied. She dipped the cloth in the water and gently wiped the dried blood from his cheek. You walked back wearing the beast's bones, she said. You have no idea what that means to my people. I just didn't want to die, he said with a small smile. You are more than just alive now. You are legend. Reed looked at her. What's your name? She paused. No one ever asked me that before. She said, my name is Velra. Thank you, Velra, he said. She blushed slightly, but stood tall. Get some rest. Tomorrow, the planet watches. The next day, the Grand Hall of Judgment filled with aliens from across the region. Even other tribes had sent observers. Tarnock stood at one side of the long stone table. His armor gleamed gold. Reed stood at the other end. He still wore parts of the Ravager's bones. His presence alone made half the room fall quiet. A high elder stepped forward. Let the challenge be heard. Tarnock spoke first, his voice loud and practiced. This human is not of our kind. He is an outsider, a tool. He killed the beast, yes, but did not do so for us. He seeks only chaos. Whispers moved through the crowd. Reed didn't flinch. He waited. Then the elder turned to him. Speak. Reed stepped forward. I was sent to die. No weapons. No food. No hope. I faced the monster you all feared. I beat it. And I came back, not for power, but for truth. He looked around the room. I don't ask for your crown, Tia, but if you deny your own law, then none of you are worthy of it. The silence after his words was deep, until the elder lifted his hand. All in favor of trial by combat, raise your hands. One hand rose. Then 5, then over half. Tarnock's eyes went wide. The vote was clear. Trial by combat. As Reed left the chamber, Velra met him in the hall. You won their ears, she whispered. Now you must win their blood. He looked ahead. I plan to. Dust rose with every step he took. The gates of Vorak City groaned open, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. Reed stepped through, dragging something behind him, a massive curved horn, slick with dried blood. On his back, the beast's skull was strapped like a trophy. Over his shoulders, its bony armor clattered with each breath he took. No one dared move, no one dared speak. The human had returned, and not just alive, but changed. Reed's eyes scanned the crowd. They stood frozen warriors with spears, merchants with bags half dropped, elders with wide eyes. They had seen many warriors leave for the Ravager Wastes. None had ever come back until now. He walked straight toward the center square, where the fire pits still burned. It was where the dead were usually honored. But this time, no body was returned. Only bones and a living man. At the high balcony, leader Tarnock stood stiff, gripping the stone rail. His smug grin was gone. His eyes locked on the human's face, then dropped to the skull on his back. The beast dead by his hands. No, Tarnock muttered. Impossible. Below, Reed spoke for the first time. I finished what you sent me to die for, he said. His voice rough from smoke and blood. I brought the monster back. He threw the horn down with a loud crack. The sound echoed through the air like thunder. An elder stepped forward, voice shaky. He wears the beast's bones. Another nodded and walks among us untouched. The law of trials. Someone shouted from the crowd. The right of return, shouted another. The murmurs spread like wildfire. Reed was calm. His body ached. His ribs were still bruised. Legs held strong. He had not returned for revenge. He had returned because he had to. Then, movement in the crowd. A girl pushed forward, her hood down, her eyes fierce. VELRA. The same alien girl who had given him the secret blade. The one who had whispered the truth. Before he left, she stepped into the center beside him. Kneeling before everyone, she said, I saw him walk into death. Now he walks back wearing the beast. We must honor the law. Tarnock's voice finally cracked through the air. This is not a lit is ancient myth. No one has invoked it in generations. But it still exists, said Elder Krun. And the law speaks clearly. He who kills the Ravager and returns with its armor shall stand above all, even the one upon the throne. Tarnock's eyes flared. You would place a human above me. "We would honor the law you claim to protect," Grun replied. More elders stepped forward, nodding in silence. That night, the temple bell rang. Once, twice, thrice, 3 times meant one thing. The Council of Decision would meet at dawn. Inside, a quiet stone chamber, Velra helped bandage Reed's wounds. "You shouldn't stand for long," she said, her hands gentle. "You still bleed." "I can stand," he said. "You don't understand what you've done. You've shaken their world, Reed." He looked at her. "I just wanted to survive." Velra smiled faintly. "And now, you may be chosen to lead." He shook his head. "I'm not one of you. But you bled for this land. You fought its nightmare. And you brought back proof. That makes you more than one of us." Double quotes. Reed fell silent. He had never wanted power. He only wanted to live. But now, if he didn't speak for himself, Tarnok would bury the truth. Again, he owed it to her, to the ones who couldn't speak, to the forgotten at dawn. The great hall filled with voices. The council chamber was shaped like a circle of stone, open to the skies. 10 elders stood in the middle. Tarnok on one side, Reed on the other. Elder Krun lifted a scroll and read aloud. "This meeting is called by law, to honor tradition, to hear the Outlander's claim and weigh it against the word of the throne." Tarnok spoke first. "This human was not born here. He does not know our laws. He killed the Ravager, yes, but perhaps it was luck. A wounded beast, a trap set long ago." Some nodded, others frowned. Then Reed stepped forward. "I was sent with no food, no water, a dull blade. Tarnok wanted me gone, but I didn't die." He placed the skull of the Ravager in the center of the chamber. "I didn't just survive. I fought. I faced the creature you fear, and I beat it. Not with tricks, with grit, with pain, with fire." His voice grew stronger. "I don't want your throne. I don't want your crown. I want justice. You all saw how Tarnok treats those he fears." He looked straight at the leader. "He sent me to die. What will he do to you if you step out of line?" Silence, then murmurs, then whispers, then the bell rang once. The vote had begun. Outside, the crowd waited inside. Velra waited to holding her breath. The council stepped away to count. After minutes that felt like hours, Elder Krun returned and spoke for words. "The trial is granted." Asterisk, the morning sky turned gray as storm clouds gathered above Vorak City. Inside the Grand Council Hall, the air was heavier than usual. Not because of heat, but because of what was coming. A trial had been declared. A human had challenged their highest leader, and tradition demanded the council listen. 13 elders stood in a ring. Each wore long cloaks, each one marked with the chains of duty: silver for law, black for battle, coup, and red for blood spilled in truth. This was not just a meeting. This was history, and everyone knew it. Reed stood in the center of the chamber, facing Tarnok across the circle. He still wore the Ravager's bone helm, but now it was polished and strapped tighter. His wounds were healing, but slowly. The bruises on his side, the deep cut on his arm, and the limp in his leg, all reminders of the fight. Tarnok, by contrast, wore gold-trimmed armor and a smirk. His guards stood behind him like statues, the elder at the center. Avar raised a long staff and struck the stone floor. "Council of Chains is now in order," he said. "By tradition, we hear the Outlander. Then we hear the throne." Reed stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I came to your world by accident. I stayed because I was captured. You used me, sent me to die. I lived. That's not a story. That's truth." He turned his head, looking at each elder. "You don't have to like me. You don't have to trust me. But look around you. How many warriors have you sent into the wastes? How many returned? You treat courage like a trick. You treat survival like a crime. He pointed at Tarnok. Your leader wanted me gone. Now he wants to silence me. Tarnok snorted. You speak well for a savage. Reed didn't flinch. I fought the monster. You fight your own people. Murmurs echoed in the chamber. Elder Avar banged his staff again. Silence. The accused may now respond. Tarnok stepped forward. Let me remind this council, he said with pride. This is not one of us. He is human. From another world. He knows nothing of our laws, our ways, or our honor. He walked slowly around the chamber. Yes, he killed the beast. But beasts can be wounded, weakened, even trapped. We do not know what truly happened in those woods. He turned to the elders. He wears the bones of a Ravager, but so did Ancient. Warriors yet, none of them stood in this chamber, demanding power. Elder Zukra, tall and blind in one eye, spoke suddenly. He is not demanding power. He is demanding justice. Tarnok frowned. You forget your place. No, she replied. You forget yours. The tension snapped like a wire. Then something unexpected happened. Velra stepped forward from the shadows. No one had invited her inside, but no one dared stop her either. She raised a bone charm high in the air. This belonged to my brother, she said. He was sent to the wastes last season. He never came back. She looked at Reed. He brought the monster down. That means something. It means he did what others could not. That is more than legend. That is proof. Tarnok sneered. She is a child. She is a witness, said Elder Avar, and she speaks with truth. Reed looked at Velra, surprised but grateful. She nodded softly before stepping back. The council whispered among themselves for a moment, then Elder Avar raised both hands. According to the laws written in the Iron Codex, he said, if a challenger is wronged by the throne, and if he proves unmatched courage in a trial of survival, he may invoke the final chain, the duel of law. Gasps filled the chamber. Tarnok's voice dropped low. You can't be serious. But Avar was already holding the ceremonial Chanarord with 3 red rings at its center. He laid it before Reed. If you accept, there will be no more words. No more trials, no more votes. Only combat. Reed looked at the chain. His hands were still bandaged, his muscles still sore. But he remembered the Ravager's scream, the feel of cold dirt in his hands, the voice of the girl who risked her life to help him. He reached down and lifted the chain. I accept. Outside, the city bells began to ring. Trial by combat. By ancient law, it could only happen once every 10 years. And now, it would be between a human and a tyrant. That night, fires were lit across every district. Word spread fast. The Outlander would fight the throne. Children played with toy swords. Old warriors polished their armor. And in the highest room of the temple, Tarnok prepared. Not with fear, but with poison. He held a tiny vial in his hand. Let him walk tall, he whispered to himself. I'll make sure he falls by dawn. Asterisk, the stars above Vorak City burned brighter than usual. It was the night before the duel of law. People whispered in every corner. In marketplaces, homes, and alleyways. Only one thing was talked about: the fight between the human and the throne. Some were scared, some were excited, but all of them would watch. Inside a quiet stone room, Reed sat alone. His chest still ached. His shoulder was stiff, but his mind was sharp. He ran his fingers over the Ravager's skull beside him. You got me here, he muttered. Now I finish it. The door creaked open. Velra stepped inside, holding a bowl of broth and a wrapped cloth. You haven't eaten, she said softly. Reed took the bowl, nodded, and sipped slowly. Velra unwrapped the cloth and revealed a pair of bone gauntlets strong, carved from the Ravager's front limbs, polished, ready. "These will protect your arms," she said. "I shaped them myself." Reed smiled. "You're full of surprises." "You need every edge you can get," she said, then paused. "He's not going to fight fair." Reed looked at her. "I know." In the throne chamber, Tarnok stood before a black mirror. Beside him, his personal alchemist poured poison into a tiny needle. "His blood will slow," the alchemist whispered. "His mind will blur," Tarnok sneered. "I'll pierce his arm before the fight begins. Just a scratch. That's all I need." The alchemist bowed. "Then he will fall." By morning, the arena of blades was filled with noise. Thousands sat in the stone rings above. Aliens from across the region came to see it. The duel of law hadn't happened in decades and never against a human. Drums pounded. Dust rose. The center of the arena was flat and marked with red symbols, ancient war signs. No weapons were allowed except what the fighters wore. 2 warriors would enter. Only one would walk out. Reed stepped into the ring first. The crowd went silent. Asterisk. He wore the Ravager's shoulder plates, the bone gauntlets Velra made, and a simple belt across his chest. His face was calm, but fire burned in his eyes. Tarnok followed. His armor gleamed gold, but his smile was sharper than steel. In his hand, he held a ceremonial blade, one every leader carried into such duels as the sun reached its peak. Elder Avar stepped into the arena and raised his hands. "Let tradition be fulfilled. Let the law be honored. This is a duel of blood, not of words." He looked at both warriors. "Begin." Tarnok rushed first. Fast, heavy, and powerful. He swung his blade low. Reed dodged, rolled to the side, then kicked hard against Tarnok's leg. The alien grunted but didn't fall. Then came the trick as their arms clashed. Tarnok's hidden needle, small and sharp, slid from under his wrist plate. He jabbed Reed's forearm. Just once. Just enough. Reed didn't notice. But Tarnok smiled. He pulled back and waited at first. Reed was fast. He dodged strikes, blocked blows, and even landed a hard punch to Tarnok's ribs. The crowd began to cheer low at first, then louder. But then, something changed. Reed's vision blurred. His breath grew heavy. His knees wobbled. His limbs slowed. He staggered back. Velra, watching from the stands, stood up in fear. No. Tarnok saw the moment and attacked. Slash. Strike. Kicked out. Reed fell to one knee. Gasping, Tarnok raised his blade high, but before he could swing, Reed moved. With his last clear thought, he ducked and tackled Tarnok's leg. The crowd roared. Tarnok, Neke, stumbled, furious, and tried to stab, but Reed caught his wrist. With the Ravager gauntlet, he twisted snap. Tarnok screamed. Reed punched once, twice. Tarnok's face cracked against the stone, but Reed collapsed too. Breathing hard, the poison was deep in him now. Velra pushed through the guards, ran into the ring, Tell his head up. "Stay with me," she whispered. I brought the antidote. She poured the glowing liquid into his mouth. Reed coughed. His eyes fluttered. Tarnok staggered up, blood dripping from his mouth. "You cheated," he hissed. Velra turned toward the elders. Look beneath his wrist. The needle. The guards grabbed Tarnok, pulled back his wristplate, and revealed the tiny silver dart. The crowd gasped. Elder Avar stepped forward. "You poisoned the Outlander in a sacred duel. That is dishonor. That is death." Tarnok's eyes went wide. No, I am the throne. "Not anymore," Avar said, and raised his staff. "By law and by trial, Reed, The Outlander stands victorious. The crowd stood, thousands cheered. The chains of law had spoken, and the Outlander had risen. The crimson sun rose over Vorak City. Its light turned the sand blood red. The air was still, but the people were not. The city hadn't slept, not after. What had happened? Tarnak the Throne himself had been caught cheating, and the Outlander had survived the poison. Now, by sacred law, a second duel was required. One without secrets, one without mercy. One to the death. The arena of blades had been cleaned. The red war symbols were repainted, fresh and sharp. This time, there would be no ceremony, no drums, no elders watching from THRONES, only the fighters and the people. Reed stood in the shadow of the arena wall. His body was weak, but his eyes sharp as ever. Velra tightened the bone armor over his chest. "You should still be resting." She whispered. "I will rest," he said. "When I finish this." She looked at him, hesitating. "You don't have to kill him," she said softly. Reed looked at the rising sun, the deep red light shining across the sand. "Yes, I do." On the far side of the arena, Tarnak stood alone. He had been stripped of his golden armor. Now he wore only leather and old bone. No one had helped him prepare. No guards, no alchemist, no counsel. Only silence. He gritted his teeth. He would not lose to a human. Not here, not ever. The bell rang once. Reed stepped in too. The ring Tarnak followed. The crowd watched from every edge, some standing on rooftops, others sitting on high walls. Even children sat silently, knowing what was about to happen. This was no longer about politics. This was about honor. The second bell rang, and they charged. Tarnak struck first, fast and wild, his claws slicing through air. Reed dodged and slammed his gauntlet into Tarnak's ribs. The alien roared and kicked Reed in the chest, knocking him back into the dust. They circled, like beasts. Tarnak laughed. "You should have stayed dead, Outlander." Reed wiped blood from his mouth. "You should have sent a better monster." They clashed again. Reed blocked high, then swept Tarnak's legs. The alien hit the ground, rolled, and lunged with a headbutt. His thick skull slammed into Reed's forehead. Both stumbled back, dazed. Tarnak spat. "Why do you fight for them?" he hissed. "They fear you. They obey you. But none love you." Reed stood tall. "I don't fight for them. I fight because of you." Tarnak screamed and rushed with both fists. Reed ducked and punched straight. Into Tarnak's chest, bone cracked. Tarnak fell to his knees, gasping, but he wasn't done. From his belt, he pulled a jagged blade illegal, hidden, desperate. He charged. One last time. But Reed saw it. He twisted, grabbed Tarnak's arm mid-swing, slammed it into the ground. The blade flew from his grip. Reed pinned Tarnak's throat with his knee and raised. A heavy bone shard. "This is for the ones you sent to die," he said. Tarnak gasped. They were weak. Reed struck dot once, and it was over. Silence, then wind, then cheers. The crowd roared like thunder. Dust rose. Horns blew. People screamed his name. Reed, the Outlander. The Bone Wearer. Velra ran to him and caught him. As he fell to his knees, "You did it," she said. Holding him, he leaned on her shoulder, eyes still locked on Tarnak's body. "It's done." Later, in the Grand Hall, the council stood. No throne remained. Only a circle. Elder Avar stepped forward, carrying a simple bone crown, one never worn, only given in times of great change. He offered it to Reed, but Reed stepped back. "I didn't come here to rule," he said. The elders looked confused. "I came here because you left your people in the hands of a coward." Reed continued. Let them choose someone better, someone of your own. He turned to Velra. She speaks for them. She fought for them. Let her guide you. Gasps filled the hall. Velra's eyes widened. Me? You saw what needed to change before anyone else, he said. You risked your life to help a stranger. The elders nodded in agreement, and the crowd outside cheered louder when her name was called. That night, Reed stood at the edge of the city, looking up at the stars. Velra walked. Beside him, you could stay, she said. I might, he said, with a small smile. But maybe not forever. She nodded. Even so, your name will stay here longer than you ever could. He looked at her. You'll make a better leader than I ever would. She smiled. Maybe, but you reminded them what a real leader looks like. The sky above shimmered. A shooting star crossed, and for the first time in years, Verac City knew peace. Not because a man had won, but because a monster had fallen, and the Outlander, Ate, had risen. And the Outlander had risen. The wind across Vorak City was calm. For the first time in many seasons, the skies above were not filled with war horns or trial bells but soft music. Children laughed in the streets. Elders sat in open air again. And across every corner of the city, the people whispered one name. The Outlander. Not with fear. With respect, Reed stood on a tall balcony. Looking over the city, he helped change. The Ravager's skull no longer hung on his back, now rested in the Hall of Honor, placed on a stone pillar under glowing light, a symbol of strength, survival, and truth. Velra stepped beside him, dressed not in rags, but in robes of leadership. They're rebuilding, she said softly. The lower rings have clean water now, and the council has removed the chain taxes. Reed smiled. You've done more in a week than Tarnok did in 10 years, she chuckled. Only because you cracked the throne wide open first. Days had passed since the duel, but the change was just beginning. Velra had been named Voice of the People, the youngest ever in the history of their world. She didn't rule by force. She listened, asked questions, and made choices with the people instead of above them. Reed didn't stay in the throne room. He helped rebuild homes, repaired old doors, taught children how to tie knots and cook meat without burning it. To them, he wasn't a warrior anymore. He was Red the Fixer, and that made him smile more than the cheering ever did. One afternoon, a messenger arrived at the gates, a sleek, gray pod with earth markings. Reed watched as the pod opened and a human soldier stepped out. Dusty boots, worn uniform, and eyes wide with shock. Reed Carter? The man asked, holding a device. You're alive. Reed raised an eyebrow. Last I checked, you've been gone 5 years. Earth thought you were dead. I got busy. The soldier looked around at the alien buildings. The banners with Reed's face carved into them, and the alien children wearing bone-carved bracelets in his honor. Busy? He repeated. Reed shrugged. Little bit. The soldier held out a tablet. Command wants you back. They say the frontier is unstable. There's a lot going on. They need someone with experience. Reed didn't answer right away. Velra joined him, folding her hands. Is it time? I don't know yet, Reed said. That night, he sat with Velra by the fire. People danced nearby, no longer afraid to sing in public. Meat roasted. Drinks passed hands. I thought I came here to die, he said. You came here to survive, Velra corrected. But then you did more. Reed stared into the flames. I was just a soldier, following orders. Earth never treated me like more than a tool. Tarnok. He treated me the same. But this place made me something else. Velra looked at him quietly. You became legend. Reed chuckled. I just wanted to make it through one more day. She leaned close. And now you've given us years." The next morning, he walked alone to the Ravager's grave. They had buried the beast outside the city walls, far from homes, but marked with stones and carvings. Not as a monster, as part of the story. Reed knelt down and placed a new carving on the grave. A symbol of peace, 2 hands. One human, one alien. He whispered, "You were the trial, but also the turning point." Then stood at the gates. The Earth pod waited. Reed turned to see Velra standing nearby, arms folded. "No speeches," he said. "I wouldn't dare." She smiled. "You'll keep them safe, better than I ever thought I could." He nodded. They didn't hug, didn't cry, just looked at each other. To people who had changed a world together. The pod lifted into the sky. Below, the people watched him go. Some waved, some cried. A few stood with hands over hearts palms open. The Vorik sign of deep honor. Reed looked down from the small window and smiled. Some stories begin with war. Some with love. His had started with betrayal, but ended with hope. Because one man had walked into death and came back carrying the bones of a beast not to conquer, but to show a better way forward.